Hi, and welcome back to Military Law Talks. So in today's video, we're talking about change to the DoD. Surprise, surprise, right? So I feel like this is a common theme with the new Trump administration. Like change is kind of the only constant. And so this change is particular to the Army. So I'm going to go over a SECDEF memo that came out and then a Secretary of the Army letter to the force. So let's get into it. Okay, so this was a memorandum released signed by the Secretary of Defense on April 30th, and it's discussing Army transformation and acquisition reform. So it's discussing that, hey, we've been given a clear message. So I'm reading from the memo. It says, the president gave us a clear mission, achieve peace through strength. To achieve the United States Army must prioritize defending our homeland and deterring China in the Indo-Pacific region, deterring war, and, if required, winning in a rapidly evolving battlefield requires soldiers who are physically and mentally resilient, rigorously trained, and equipped with the best technology available. And so to do this, this memo is directing the Army to restructure and to change acquisition systems, to prioritize different weapon systems, including long-range precision fires, air and missile defense, including the Golden Dome for America. Remember, that is something that President Trump has talked about. Cyber, electronic warfare, and counter space capabilities. And so he's directing the Secretary of the Army to do some comprehensive transformation. And so to do that, they're doing a lot of changes. And so here's some things that they're directing the Army to do. So big things, fielding long-range missiles, achieving electromagnetic and air, I don't know how to say that. By using unmanned systems, drones, drone swarms, enabling AI-driven command and control. That's definitely new. Extending advanced manufacturing, including 3D printing, additive manufacturing, modernizing ammunition, and increasing Army presence in the Indo-Pacific by pre-positioning stocks, rotational deployments. So looks like we'll see a lot more deployments to the Indo-Pacific, doing exercises with allies and partners, strategic base access, basing, overflight, etc. So how are they going to achieve this? Well, they plan on eliminating a lot of wasteful and outdated equipment. So ending certain obsolete systems, and such as excessive ground vehicles, outdated UAVs, reducing spending on outdated weapon systems and climate-related initiatives. So that's a really big shift. I mean, when I first came into the Army back in 2011, I mean, that was like a big shift to be like a net zero installation. And so this has, been a decade plus of trying to achieve a lot of climate-related initiatives. So that's a big shift. Eliminating wasteful contracts and excessive travel funding. I mean, this is something I was just discussing with a friend recently, that we have way too many conferences and classes and travel for training that absolutely could be done over Zoom, Teams. Government employees have Teams accounts, and lots of training can be done online, not in person. Now, I will say there is some value in in-person training. Definitely, you kind of lose that when you have an online course, but it definitely would result in huge cost savings because travel budgets are really large, particularly for like training commands. Reducing or reassessing and optimizing pre-positioned stocks, modernizing language training programs to improve mission effectiveness. What else are they doing? Big, huge changes, restructuring Army force structure at echelon. So they're merging headquarters, reducing and restructuring manned attack helicopters, replacing them with drones, divesting outdated formations, including armor and aviation units across the total Army, active reserve National Guard. So change is not only coming for the active duty Army, but also the reserves and the National Guard. Realigning forces to deter China in the Indo-Pacific, downsizing or closing redundant headquarters. This is a major, major change. So merging Army Futures Command and TRADOC into one command. Now, this will be interesting because Army Futures Command is currently in Austin, Texas, though that property where they're at is at the University of Texas at Austin's their campus. So they're leasing that space. And then TRADOC is in Fort Eustis. And so who knows who will move, but I mean, maybe the one that's in a lease position. So maybe Army Futures Command is moving to TRADOC. I'm speculating here. I don't know exactly what will happen. There is a push, particularly it was during the first Trump administration, and it seems to be echoing and repeating in the Trump administration too, to move units out of the national capital region, to move agencies out of the national capital region. So maybe TRADOC will move. Who knows? I know people who work at both, so it should be interesting. Merging Army North and Army South. Now they're at the same installation, so that'll be a lot easier to merge, but I think that that's going to mean rifts are coming, so reduction in forces. And I'm going to do a future video on rifts. Also restructuring the sustainment enterprise. So Joint Munitions Command, JMC, and Army Sustainment Command combining. They are both also at the same installation. And so that'll be a lot easier than, the Army Futures and TRADOC. But Army Futures and TRADOC, they have very different mission sets. So it'll be interesting to see them merge. Also review and consolidate operations across depots, arsenals, and installations. And so I think I've discussed this in a previous video, but this happened in the 90s. There was the BRAC, the base realignment. And I think that that's what this is hinting at, that, hey, there could be, and then we have a lot of really, really small installations, small Army depots, small Army arsenals, all throughout the US. Some of them are like very small, like I'm talking 50 or less employees, like government employees, the rest are contractors. And so maybe we could see some base closures with this. Workforce modernization and reduction. So again, cutting the force, really particularly civilians. And so one directive is revising civilian hiring and firing policies to enable the department's ability to expertly manage talent. And so I've done videos on the DoD's DRP. So the DoD had another deferred resignation program. The SECDEF has said that he wants to reduce the civilian workforce in the DoD by about 8%. I think that they're going to meet those goals with the DRP 2.0. But with all these moves, we could see still some involuntary separations. I'm speculating here, but I believe through the RIF process. And so I think that that is coming. There's directives about acquisition reform, budget optimization. So working with, including that we're consolidating budget lines, we're shifting to capacity building, right? So drones, etc. This is one that I have discussed in previous videos, and it's definitely something on the minds of the Senate subcommittee for the armed forces, particularly Senator Elizabeth Warren. She has talked about, and I totally agree with her, that there needs to be some right to repair provisions in Army contracting. And this is, government wide. And so she points out, and Elizabeth Warren has pointed this out several times in different committee hearings, to say that there's contracts out there where contractors have retained the rights to repair an item and that the military can't repair it, even if they're in like some remote location and they absolutely have the ability to repair the item. Per the contract, the military has to pay to fly some contractor out to like the middle of nowhere to repair an item that the military absolutely can't. And so I think that this is a great directive, and I hope that they continue to ensure that these provisions are in contracts to allow the military the right to repair their own equipment, the equipment that they buy, and that they don't have to, have the contract repair the equipment. Also, it says expand the use of other transaction authority. These are agreements, contracts that are not FAR-based contracts. So the FAR is the Federal Acquisition Regulation. Those contracts are very cumbersome. It is highly regulated. And I'm going to tell you, even people who've been doing contracts for a while, there's still something always new to learn. The FAR changes, and we have like the defense, the DFARs and the AFARs. And so it is very cumbersome to try to contract under the FAR. And so the OTAs, it's like some other type of contracting mechanism, and it's outside of the FAR, and it's usually a lot easier and cheaper. And so FYI, that is how the Operation Warp Speed for, a certain very fast medical provision was created. It was OTAs, not regular contracts, because it necessitated to do a very quick mechanism. All right. And then, just reducing waste, do performance-based contracting, ensure that we're getting our, best bang for the buck, and encouraging contractors to be cost effective. All right. So that is the DoD's memo. And again, that was issued on 30 April. So right around the same time, I think it was the very next day, this memo went out from the Secretary of the Army to all Army individuals, and it talks about essentially those changes that were discussed in the DoD memo, implementing it for the Army. And so this is Sec Army, so it builds on, it talks about, all the same things. And so it's, introducing drones, fielding a new tank, developing long-range assault aircraft, and different use of artificial intelligence. And so we're going to reduce what the SECDEF memo said, these older systems that we're not going to use anymore. And so it talks about that. It also says that they're going to eliminate 1,000 staff positions in HQDA. So that's big. And then it talks about the combining of Army Futures Command, TRADOC into a single headquarters, Army North and Army South. Now, interestingly, it doesn't talk about JMC and ASC. So I thought that was kind of interesting that it didn't give that information. But it is in the Secretary of Defense's memo. It also says we're going to restructure aviation brigades, CABs, reduce one aerial cavalry squadron per CAB, consolidating aerial aviation sustainment, converting all infantry brigade combat teams to mobile brigade combat teams. So we'll see what that looks like. That'll be interesting. Canceling certain procurements of older systems, the AH-64 Delta, and ground vehicles, and obsolete UAVs. And so it's already putting into effect, the SECDEF's memo that went out. So This is the Army's implementation of that. And so we'll see, like I said, really the only thing that we can count on is change. Change is coming. Change is happening pretty rapidly within the DoD, within the Army. And remember, we got a big Army birthday coming up. So the Army's 250th birthday is coming up this summer. So I'll be covering that and covering all the changes. So hopefully you like this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. I'm a new channel, so help me grow. And if you have any comments or desire for future content, just put it in the comments below. I read them all and I try to respond to all of them. So thanks so much for